Welcome back to the MyLatinLife podcast. Since 2014, MyLatinLife has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Our guest today is an OG of Latin America expat stories, content. He's an author, Colin Post, expatchronicles.com. We welcome Colin to the podcast. How's it going, man?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for being here. It's epic to have a legend like yourself on the podcast. I'm probably not the right person to do it justice by interviewing you. Do you do a lot of interviews outside of your pod?
No, and I really appreciate the intro because it's been a while since I was kind of a household name, and I've felt forgotten for years now. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, there's this kind of vein of Latin American writers and article storytellers, and I think you kind of fit into that history over the past couple of decades. We were talking offline what it was like being sort of like a gringo in Latin America pre-smartphone, which would just be a movie. Although anyone could do it, you could just not bring your phone out of the house for a day. But
it'd be more than that. No, I actually just did a post on what it would be like, what you could do to replicate it. It'd be hard. I wouldn't do it myself probably, but that's also because I'm old and I got money now. But if I were young and broke, it wouldn't be that hard. It would be hard, yeah. But
I love how you're still writing about this stuff a little bit. You know, I was just checking out your blog, which has been around for a long time, right? Like, when did you start?
2008.
Expatchronicles.com.
2008. And so it's expat
dash. Yeah, I know.
Because I was an idiot and I didn't know anything about the internet. But I learned enough to launch a website, and I got the domain to have a dash in it because I thought it was more readable. And some other prick got Expat Chronicles with no dash, and he probably wants, I don't know, some 5-figure amount for it because, there is still some search results that just for Expat Chronicles, and it's a good name. But I got Expat-Chronicles. If you Google it, it should be the first to come up.
Yeah. And so coming up on 20 years then.
Yeah.
How's that feel?
I'm accepting getting old. I'm 47, so I'm closing in on 50. So feeling like an 18-year blogger is a little lower on the prominence than turning 50. So I'm accepting my aging well, and I'm embracing.
Well, I love that you're still churning out stories a little bit. I just found this so funny, dude. So at the time of this recording, you go on expatchronicles.com, and the first article is how LATAM expats are soft and weak.
Yeah, so that's the typical tone. It's pretty confrontational and blunt and all that, irreverent. It used to be a lot worse. I think I've calmed down a little. But that's basically going to be the old expat versus the new, and I think the new is just too comfortable. And I could go through those points really quickly if you want to go through them real quick. But that's basically how you could get by without the smartphone. That's the question you were asking before.
Okay, let's do it. Hit me with the points.
All right, the first one: don't do remote work only. Like that's making life way too easy, getting paid U.S. dollars, U.S. job. Take a part-time job, teaching English or volunteering. Do some kind of work where you got to show up in person and be surrounded by natives every day. That's one. The next one, join a sports team where you are the only gringo. Don't be playing, baseball with other Americans at the embassy or whatever, softball with the embassy gringos, or basketball with your expat pals. Join a sports team. This was like seriously the most intense language immersion I had was playing on a basketball team of Peruvians who all grew up together in the same Jesuit private school, like from kindergarten through graduation. And you got to run plays with them. You got to follow instructions. Then you got to talk smack in that environment. That was like, I was just lost. Join a sports team where you're the only gringo. Don't live in the gringo enclave. Don't live in the nicest part of town. Live somewhere where you can go weeks without seeing another gringo. Next one, don't use dating apps. Now, I got married in 2012, so I never, I guess I probably hooked up on, I've hooked up with somebody I met online, but not these swiping apps. Now, if I were single today, I imagine it's easy, and that's what everybody does. But if you want to do the hardcore thing, go out, go dancing, take a dance class if you need to. Most important, don't date anybody who speaks English better than you speak Spanish. That will hold you
Mm.
back. So you got to be making love in Spanish, but that's going to be the quickest way if your Spanish isn't there yet.
Make love in Spanish.
Yeah. Don't buy your food at the fancy supermarkets. That's not really a smartphone thing, but go to the wet markets. Don't take Ubers. Take the bus whenever possible. If you're in a hurry, hail a taxi in the street or get a bicycle. Ride in the street. Don't be a pussy. Don't use online maps when you're out and about. I would confirm the address online, but then when you get in the neighborhood, you got to ask around, talk to people. That's kind of like life in Latin America. Don't carry plastic. Pay with just cash. Don't. This is stuff I got later when I was married, but don't stream all your video entertainment. Get a cable package. Watch the local news. You don't have to watch whatever bullshit they got on prime time, but you ought to know what it is. In Peru, it's Al Fondo hay sitio and Esto es guerra, that kind of stuff. You got to be aware of the local entertainment. Don't stream all your music. Listen to the radio. Mm-hmm. You might not be too pleased with this, but don't hire fixers to do your government legalese. Obviously, if somebody's, if I were to go back, I'd hire a fixer to go queue up and do all the residency stuff. But I know where the places are. I already know where you take the pictures. I know who to talk to. I know where to go. Once you got that, I say get a fixer. But you ought to learn how to do it. Queue up with the masses, And I'd say don't go totally secular. Attend a mass, or whatever religious service applies to you at least once, and you'll learn something. So those are the kind of the ways I think. And I have a good friend who kind of went down to. He's in Guadalajara now, and so I get kind of a look at what the expat scene is now, and they're really not as immersed as we were. And these are kind of my ideas to really embrace the culture. Otherwise, I think what he's doing is really almost like he married, and that's a big one. I'd add that. Get married. If you're not married and you're not doing any of these things on this list, you're kind of like glorified tourism, in my book. And if you really want to be a true assimilated resident or immigrant, whatever, I would hit some from this list. That's my take. We did it we had to back before smartphones, but and before having money, being broke.
It's because you had to, and probably also a genuine desire to learn the language.
No, well, yeah, I had a genuine desire, but I had to. Even if I didn't want to, I had to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these things are easy. If I could have played with plastic, that's one. I don't know why I put that on this list, but that felt important. Going through the hassle of getting cash, making change, dealing with the currency issues, like the times I've gone down and seen my pal in Guadalajara or wherever. And it's just so easy with the cards now. And I remember when I never would have thought this would have happened, but it used to just be a rule. You could not pay a taxi of all things with a card. And now it's like, it's hard to find one that won't take a card. So in Lima.
It ruins the human element of the interaction.
Totally. And the local element. Now, that's what this is trying to do, is get into the local element. You can still kind of be, if you're remote working and hanging out with other gringos and doing everything with Uber and plastic and going to restaurants with English menus and that kind of shit, like you still have a foot back home. And it might sound like a lot for me living in Philly, living in the States for 7 years now. But, I put in my time and being married and having suppliers down there. I can't get my foot out of Peru now. There's no way. I can't do it. So that's kind of why I get to thinking about this. Get all the way into the pool.
You have a business related to Peru?
Yeah, I sell herbal supplements from Peru. So all my suppliers. But I'd add that the more important thing is marriage. So all my in-laws and, 2 of my 3 children were baptized in Peru. We have family and a couple of lifelong friends. I hope to be lifelong friends in Lima.
Okay.
And a bunch of gringos, obviously.
So if I may ask, is your spouse is like Peruvian?
Yeah, from Arequipa, the first city I landed in 2008. How do you keep up Peru?
Yeah, I've heard good things.
It sucks. Don't. It's all wrong. It sucks. It's good for a week, maybe 2 weeks, not to live. Not definitely not with children. It's boring. City of 1 million.
Good weather though.
Yeah. Cold winters. Winters at night get down to like 40. So yeah, you need ski winter hats and gloves and what all you're used to. Well, not all year in Ontario, not everything you're used to. You don't need snow boots or base layers or anything like that, but you definitely need a heavy coat, winter hats and gloves.
Definitely. They're famous for
There's snow
the hats
shovels.
and
No snow
stuff they
shovels.
have. And so for the audience and for me as well, uh, a lot of the focus of your writings have been on Colombia and Peru, right? Those are kind of the two countries, or
So
how would
yeah,
you
I did
describe
three
it?
years, 3 years in Colombia, 7 years in Peru. This is interesting though because my time in Colombia was like by far the biggest source of traffic because they were my wild years, my last years as a bachelor, the most nefarious content, the most trouble, but also that's where the most demand is. I mean, there are more gringos interested in Colombia than Peru. If I had to just spitball, I'd say at least 5 to 1, if not 10 to 1, if
Yeah.
not more.
Yeah, it's true. Why do you why do you
Why do
think
I think that?
Peru is so underrated? Or
I would
not?
say that uh, I think that I don't think I know any country, and this goes anywhere. You could take this around the world, but the countries with the most gringo interest is directly correlated to the sexual attractiveness of the local, and that's true.
Uh,
Look, even it's women. It's not just men; it's women too. So women, where do they go? You know, Greece, Italy, Argentina. They're not going to China, right? You know what I'm saying? So and generally, I don't care. I think there's beautiful people everywhere. You know, I've had affairs with all colors of the rainbow. But if you're looking at the macro interest,
mhm.
most people want like, you know, European, if not Southern European or Northern European features. And Colombia just has a good bit of that compared to Peru. Peru is the heart of the Inca Empire.
Okay, I'm
Now,
gonna
I don't
do
want to say
a
again, if you're just any politically correct fascists out there, you know, like I'm totally all colors of the rainbow, beautiful people everywhere. I'm married Peruvian, but that's reality. That's where people go. They want to go to
yeah, yeah,
Colombia,
no, you're right,
Argentina,
you're right.
Brazil. They don't want to go to Haiti or Jamaica or fill in the blank, Bolivia. That's why. If you take away that, Peru destroys Colombia. Destroy Lima. Well, no, not all Peru. Lima destroys.
Well,
Well, no,
I'm
there's the
curious your
weather
take
issue.
on something then, Colin. You know, because there's kind of a couple different market segments that are interested in Latin America. There's young single guys and girls in their 20s. There's families, right? Like families who are tired of the US type of thing. Families of four or five. We've even done visas for like a family of seven moving to Latin
That's
America.
interesting. Yeah, no, that's
And
cool.
then,
And I would love to meet those kind of people. It's hard to meet them when you're kind of in the middle class midtown part of town and you get mad drunk with your expat pals. But
and
for those guys, you want Lima is going to be paradise. Lima will be paradise for those people.
yeah,
You're
and
married. You're not
retirees
looking at.
too. I just wanted to finish the thought. So it's like it's kind of like for every life cycle, there's kind of something for everybody in Latin America. You know, singles, families, retirees, investors as well, of course. So you know, it's like I'm not sure if you've evolved maybe with your content too over time, where you're speaking a bit more to retirees or families or that kind of thing, or
I've had friends. The only retirees I've met though are like after a divorce or whatever, and they're coming to find a cheap young wife. You know what I mean? A retiree bringing his family down there. I have not met one, but I would assume that's because they would be in kind of the gringo enclave bubble. And I've been to the bubble, but I was never immersed in the bubble.
mhm.
Or every big city will have like a big English speaking Protestant church. I've never been to one of those. So I don't know that world. And a lot of, and speaking about the bubble, as the expat scene goes, I've always been part of the I guess the proletariat or whatever. And it's very common to hear the other expats disparage the bubble, the wealthy gringo enclave. Oh, that's not the real Colombia. That's not the real Peru or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And I was thinking about this, and I have visited them, and I've known them, and I don't think they ever talked about us. You know, I don't think they ever think about us. But yeah, I was never really a part of that, so I don't know that. I don't know that crowd. That's a good idea. It's cool. It's great. Good for the kids. But I would tell them, get your kids out of the bubble a bit. I know one guy here in Philly. He was the son of a DuPont executive, and he lived in Sao Paulo for 2 years. Never learned language. He said it was a total bubble. We never left. I didn't know anybody who had a job in Brazil. We just knew the embassy people and the corporate executive scene. It was a total bubble. We never left it. And he enjoyed his time here. He had a Brazilian girlfriend who spoke perfect English. That was it. I don't recommend that. I've never lived it either. I visited there.
Dude, I had a random thought. Who is the guy that owns the hotel in Mompox in
Richard
Colombia?
McCall. He's an interesting guy. Yeah, he's a great guy.
He's been on the podcast, by the way.
Yeah, Columbia Calling is his podcast.
Yes.
He did what I originally aimed out to do. There's a very small percentage of gringos who actually create a life and stay with a local business. I did not think I was going to start a business in the United States, like a U.S. based customer base. I sell on Amazon and online e-commerce. My dream was to build a business in South America and be part of Latin American as a gringo. And I launched businesses to the local markets that just never. I mean, yeah, if I had stuck with it, it'd have gone somewhere. He's made that work. So I take my hat off to Richard. He's a great guy.
Shout out Richard McCall. It was episode 177 of the My Latin Life podcast, 2024, when we caught up with him. But yeah, you guys work together or something?
No, but he lives in Bogota. He lives in Bogota. He owns a hotel in Monpos, but he lives in Bogota, and I was in Bogota, and we met up. He was a big ally. He loved my blog, and he loved this book I wrote about this old Irish pal of mine named Christopher Kavanagh. The book, I've unpublished it. It's really, really, yeah. Christopher
Dude, the Mick was mentioned on this podcast. I think it must be by Richard. Yeah. By Richard, or who's the other guy that writes the like fiction books?
Fiction?
They're like it's like spy in Latin America books. Damn, I'll find it. But I think
I got to reach out to that guy, give him a thanks, even though the book's unpublished.
Lachlan Page.
Oh yeah. I've heard of
him. The General of Caracas.
Yeah. I've never met him.
Okay, unrelated. I'm just whipping names out of a hat right now, just to see what comes up.
I've definitely heard of him.
The Colombia Calling, because there's a Colombia Calling podcast, and there was also an Expat Chronicles podcast as well.
So I have a podcast. I'm just starting it, and I would like to ask you your most important piece of advice for that. But I've picked it up and dropped it over the years. But I don't know. I noticed that in the one interview I've done, it's like you're always talking to your guest, and like, when are we going to talk about me? Why don't you ask me some questions? So I would have questions for you. I ought to have you on the pod to ask my questions. But I guess the first one I'd say, what's your most important piece of advice for somebody starting out a podcast?
Well, that's my secret reason for having you on, is because I want to guest on the Expat Chronicles podcast.
Oh, boom, you're invited. Yeah, we'll do it soon. The other thing I noticed is I'd have a guest on, and the stuff we talk about, it takes time to digest. Oh, I want to follow up on this or that. And I guess doing it regularly it strengthens those muscles where you can follow up quickly. But if you digest anything and you want to bring it up, we'll bring it up on mine.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it on YouTube a bit, but you've done different things. Like you've done like radio a bit, or it's really mostly been writing. Writing is obviously your strong suit.
Yeah. I've done like 5 episodes of the podcast. And The first one was probably 5 years ago. It was going once a year.
How many articles or things you think you've written?
I just downloaded the archive. I want to say it's 700 pages in Word.
Like if you added up all the...
That doesn't count the books. So I've written 4 books, 5 books. I almost don't count one of them. It's sold so little. But those books combined are probably another 400 pages. 5 books, 400 pages, maybe 300. So 1,000 pages in Word. No, it's got to be either 700 pages in Word or 7,000. But I mean, yeah, I got a lot of long articles. I used to do. My dream was always to be like a feature writer for a magazine, just like long reads. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm a reader. I love to read, and I just love to create something that sucks people in to a great story, a riveting story. And I am good at it. I mean, objectively, you can say it. I've made a little bit of money at it, and I don't think there's anything in life that's as good as that. And I've tried it all. Drugs, sex, alcohol, money. Nothing fulfills me like connecting, creating something that somebody. I think at heart, I'm an artist, and that's what I'd like to get back to. That's why I'm kind of doing the podcast and writing a book. I'm writing my memoir.
Yeah, dude, your articles, you touch on a lot of these really good gringo and Latin America themes, and I want to ask you about a couple. But before we get any further, my duty as a podcaster, people are going to be like, "Wait, we need the story of the Mick." So, can you give us, I
Yeah.
guess, like a concise enough version of that story?
Yeah. So the subtitle is "Addiction and Underworld from Ireland to Colombia," and he was a crook his whole life. He was first locked up as a teen in Ireland in Mountjoy and in Dublin, from Dublin, and he was a heroin addict by the time he decided to help somebody try to mule some cocaine back to Europe, and he got popped his first time. Did 3 years in Amodelo, one of the most notorious prisons in Colombia, in Bogota, and did 3 years there. Came out with Spanish, knows all the crooks in town, and just started partying and teaching English. And back then, he got out in '89, so that was money. There was money for English teachers back there. Colombia was a mad, dodgy place. There was an armed conflict. There was narco war. Pablo Escobar was bombing the city, and there was just not that many teachers. So you could charge a really high price, and he just never went back. He was an alcoholic and an addict. Addict in Europe, alcoholic in Colombia, and he got in a lot of trouble. And I just wrote the memoir of his time in Ireland, and then his wild years in Colombia, where he kind of lost his passport somewhere along the way. And if I were a real journalist, I would have added some clarity there. But I mean, long story short, he could not go back to Ireland, and he stayed the rest of his life in Colombia, and he just died last year. Was it? It might have been 24. Yeah, it was 24. 2024. He died.
R.I.P. the Mick.
Is that enough?
And what drew you to this story so much, other than the fact that he survived Colombian jail in the '80s, which sounds crazy? What what drew you to
Well,
this
we were
story?
friends. We were just good friends. So it was really my first friend in life who was like my father's age. So I was 30 when we met, and he was 55. And I've, if you read the blog, I have substance abuse issues, lifelong. I've been sober for almost 4 years now. But I mean, I'm an alcoholic and an addict, but whatever. And he is. And I've always, this is the kind of things I'm putting together later in life. But I mean, even back to high school, I've hung out with delinquents. I was a delinquent. And I don't know why, but I'm attracted to them. We hang out. So meeting this old ex-con, hustler on the streets of Bogota, we just hit it off right away and became friends. And then just over the weeks and months, we actually tried a business together. But over the weeks and months, hearing the stories, and he knew I was a writer, and I'm like, we got to tell this story. And he wants, everybody wants their story told, especially if they're not a writer and they're getting on in life. So, we just published some of the most interesting stories little by little on the blog, and then we did a Kickstarter to raise money from the Expat Chronicles readers to basically let me take a couple months off of work while I already had a baby by that time. And we basically pay me a salary for 2 months to write this thing. And during that time, somewhere in there, we did a week in a finca outside Bogota in Sasaima, where me and Christopher's his name, holed up, and I just got his whole life story out in the countryside of Cundinamarca, recorded, and then wrote the book later based on that. which
Okay,
is
so
going to make journalists
productive
cringe. I
3 years
did
in
some
Colombia.
verification, but I mean, I should have almost put, I should have put on the book authored by him, because I mean, I didn't get any other perspective. In hindsight, I should have got his family perspective. Definitely the women, the babies, his babies' mothers. Um, I should have done more official record search. That's really why I unpublished it. Is as I learned more about journalism, an industry I have tremendous respect for, I realized how much I didn't do and how much is just based on what he says. So, but I mean, it was a good read. People liked it.
Hmm. So that's why you have it unpublished at the moment.
I don't have that much confidence in all the facts, and I also think the story arc was missing. Like, it just kind of ends with, by the end, after all the trouble he got in, by the end he was just an English teacher running around Bogota, and I think in, like, you think about like a Hollywood movie, something. Oh, he's gonna reconcile with his daughters that are out there, or give them some money, sober her up, and there was just nothing. Just the English teacher still running around Bogota, and I mean, he lived a very interesting life, but I don't know. There was no conflict and then a resolution. He had his lane and he lived in it and died in it.
Well, I guess we know that's the ultimate fallback is the English teacher. How did he get around the need for a antecedentes penales, like a criminal background check
He
with
never
his
had
jobs?
residency. He never had residency. Maybe this would change today, but I mean, in the '90s, Colombia's not. I mean, to deport somebody, you got to pay for their flight, right? How are you gonna How are you gonna physically deport somebody? Like, United States, will charter a flight and put somebody on it who's getting deported and fly them out. And the receiving country, all they have to do is receive them.
Uh,
But Colombia, I just don't think any of these countries, unless somebody's really bad, has a process for somebody who's just an English teacher overstaying their visa, has a life there, he had rich friends. He had friends who were, over the years, he had friends in government. He was a known quantity in Colombia, among Colombians. So he was just there so long. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I mean, if you don't ever do anything official, he never got an ID. He had to live his whole life on cash. And that became a problem teaching English. A lot of the big hotels and some of the companies that he had as clients for years, they needed him to be on planilla. They needed him to be in planilla.
yeah, bank
They
account.
need to give him a W-2 basically, or they
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
give him a proper factura, a proper invoice,
yeah, yeah.
1099 or something. And he just can't take anything.
Uh-huh.
So he lost clients for that. But I mean, yeah, he just lived completely off the radar, completely, kind of like, I guess not like an undocumented immigrant here, because they usually use like fake social security numbers to pay taxes and do some things, get licenses. But um, I mean, he didn't have any of that. Nothing.
This
Not even a fake social security
is
number.
just tourist visa for 30 years.
No, he had no visa. He had nothing.
Yeah,
He had no visa. He had nothing. He worked for cash and spent cash. Yeah. But I mean, he learned the country in the '80s and '90s, so he knew the. This is kind of the stuff I was talking about. He knew where to go, how to get things done the Colombian way, how to just get by and survive, and he learned it. Colombia never. I don't know if they would do that today. Maybe today. I think you'd have to get in real trouble, because he did a stint in prison in his last couple of years, in his last 5 years anyway of life. They sent him to jail for a couple months, but to actually deport somebody, you got to be like trafficking. I don't know. I don't know if they would organize a flight. I don't know. Maybe they do. I don't know.
Hmm. It's quite the story. Yeah, I mean, I haven't read the book myself, but
I'll send it to
uh,
you.
a legendary. Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be
I'll
cool.
tell you what. Anybody who emails me or leaves a comment on the blog or the podcast or whatever, I'll send you the PDF. Leave me a
Okay,
comment somewhere. Give me a share
there
or
you go.
something on
YouTube
somewhere
comments.
online, and then email me about it, and
All
I'll
right,
send you the
guys, this
PDF of it.
podcast is going to be on YouTube. Leave a YouTube comment saying you want a copy of the book. Maybe you drop your email address and we'll get that to you. Or get on the email list, maybe. Maybe we'll do a promo sometime. We could republish it or something with like, anyway.
The book?
But
No, there are people interested. There's it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's in the works, but It's there are people interested. Richard McCall, I think I've heard he is. I haven't talked to him directly about it yet, but I have it on good. I have good info that he and another guy, another buddy, want to kind of repackage it, do the fact checking I was talking about, maybe talk to some more people back in Ireland, verify some of this stuff, clear it out, and get a story arc.
How
Matt out of me
has
had 2.0, we could say.
how has your experience in Latin America served you being back in the U.S. now that you speak Spanish? You're on the East Coast, not like a particularly Latino area, but everywhere kind of is in the U.S. at this point.
I'd say it is. It's just more Caribbean. It's not, growing up in St. Louis, and I lived in Colorado and California earlier in life. So, I mean, everything is, the vast majority is Mexican and then the rest Central American. But here it's all Puerto Rican and Dominican. There is a lot of Spanish here. It's just, that's very different. The Puerto Ricans, anyway, almost all of them speak English. I don't know how many I've met don't speak English. Maybe kind of on one hand. And they're a lot culturally very different. They're a lot more Americanized or hip hopized, something like that. They're not as retaining a very different, very unique culture. They're a lot more assimilated. The Dominicans are less. I mean, a lot of them. But even them, it's baseball. You always got that to go on. You like the baseball. Oh, yeah, they love the baseball. And I sometimes say, Albert Pujols is like
Yeah.
Royalty in St. Louis. Oh, Pujols. He's best player of a generation. Yeah.
That's good. No, I mean, I think it's a superpower in the US. We like to joke about, it'll help if you speak Spanish, it'll help lower your home maintenance costs and
I don't
construction
agree with that.
costs and things like
I would have thought that before I came back. Now that I don't think it's a superpower. It's great to be able to speak Spanish. I've been really attuned to anybody talking shit behind my back because I know as an expat in Latin America, I'm always talking shit about when I'm hanging out with my gringo pals, we are always making fun of people around us. And I don't know how many catch it, but I think the vast majority don't. And I've been really attuned to anybody saying anything about me, and I'm going to bite their head off or whatever. I've never heard anybody talking about me. And yeah, the laborers, whatever, you can talk to the laborers, but I don't think that really makes you a superpower.
I know
I
it's
think
like
it's a
it's
great skill to have.
joke example, but
Okay. But especially, like, I do want to make this point, and I have written about this, but especially where it's more Mexican and Central American, or even Mexican, there are Mexican and Central Americans, a lot of them here, just not as many as the Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, but they don't really want to talk because they have a dodgy legal status. And they got to be cagey about that, especially, in the era of Trump, where people are going after them. They don't want a gringo's coming up and speaking Spanish to you. They don't want to sound like they're undocumented. They want to sound like they grew up here and they were here. So they're really cagey about that. They're really, I've had that. I've seen that many, many times among the Mexican Central American crowd. Yeah, Puerto Ricans have been
right. You're in the US. You're just like, hey, bro, de donde eres? And they just like freeze up or something.
Yeah, they totally do. And part of that's just they're Americanized. Part of it's they're adopting the culture, and people are colder here. They don't want to talk too much. Even if you come across another gringo in Latin America, yeah, you talk. But for them to come across a gringo and speak Spanish, part of it's I think surprise. How's this guy talking like that?
But then you just like, mi esposa es peruana, and they're like, he's a bro.
No, I have not had that experience. A little bit. If they're if they have a straight visa, but it's particularly among the undocumented laborers, which is just, maybe that was more my experience in St. Louis, especially the area we were living in. A lot of that, and yeah, some of them became friends with. I wouldn't say it's a superpower. Yeah, you can make friends with the undocumented migrant laborers. But, no, and that's cool. Where we lived, there's a lot of them, and we did make friends. But I don't know. I wouldn't say there's a huge benefit besides making friends. And some of them are going to be really cagey. Like you'll notice it if you ever come. You will notice.
Well, there's this one eternal topic that maybe I'll get you to opine on, which is, the classic story. The gringo LATAM sort of mixed couple, and you meet a girl in Latin America, and then the question is like, do you raise kids in the U.S. or in Latin America, or try to do like a snowbird half and half thing? How do you think about the take the girl out of Latin America, bring her to the U.S. and try to adapt? You've probably heard this.
Yeah, well, I've done it
dilemma before.
Yeah, no, yeah, I've written thousands of words about the issue, and a good pal of mine, Jake, I guess in social media is Jake Nomada. I don't know if he wants his
Yeah,
last
yeah,
name said on here, but he's
yeah.
going through it now. He's going through the exact same
He was on
process
the
now.
pod very recently in the
Yeah.
past 10 episodes, talking about
Um,
family stuff.
I'm going to listen. Yeah. So kids change everything. All right. It's like the adults always told you. And, when I moved down there in 2008, my thing was I'm never going back. And I considered it a failure. And it really became a sacred cow. It became something that I had like this religious devotion to that I would never go back to. But once we had 3 kids in a 2-bedroom house and the business was growing to the point where it needed a warehouse in the United States for my US based inventory, I needed a warehouse. And my oldest turned 5 and he's ready for private school. So I'm looking at private school tuition. And I'm looking at houses in our part of Lima, around Lince, San Isidro, Jesus Maria, around there. They started about $300,000 for 4 bedroom. And there aren't that many of those. Most of those apartments that have been built in the last 20, 30 years are 2 to 3 bedrooms. Mm-hmm. So a 4-bedroom house, and I'm going to pay private school tuition, and I need to, if I'm going to stay in Peru, I need to hire a warehouse manager in the States, which is going to be, back then it would have been at least 30 grand. Today, 45. But anyway, at the same time, an old family house in St. Louis came up, 60 grand. This is
St. Louis, Missouri.
18. Yeah. This is a working class part of town, but I know it well. And it's not so dodgy that the local high school, still, some people call this area ghetto, but like I would say if the high school is at least a quarter or a third white, that's just not that ghetto. It's definitely working class. And it is tough. But 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and school is free. And I mean, everybody who's lived there since 1960, I have their phone number. I can call them. And you know what I mean? It was just a no-brainer. Kids change everything, So we bought the house because of money, because of school. I needed a warehouse. I mean, it keeps coming down to house, business, money, kids, school. But then the other thing, I think a little racier thing I'll say is, when you've been down there a while and you meet the kind of, if I had raised beautiful white kids with money in Lima, I mean, everybody thinks their kids are cute, but my kids are here. Every single one of my kids, my son, my 2 daughters, is the most desired one in their class. Imagine how that'd go in Lima. Beautiful white kids in Lima who got money. They come out really entitled and really spoiled. And some of these are great people. Everybody, we're going to talk classism in Latin America. Some of the most morally straight, educated, hardworking people are from this class. But they are different than growing up in the States, like a middle-class lifestyle. I felt some kind of married to having my kid. Like, if you tell one of those kids to grow up like that in Lima to cut the grass, they're just going to laugh. They're not going to know how to cut the grass. I grew up cutting the grass, not just for my parents, but then for money, full time, washing dishes, all that kind of stuff, playing baseball, playing
Okay, this is
basketball.
counterintuitive. You're saying that you think kids would actually grow up more spoiled in Latin America than in the US.
Yeah. If they're white with money, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, they're total brats. Not all. Okay, I do got to temper that. A lot of the best leaders and the people really fighting to change and modernize or whatever that are from this class in Latin America. But they could be real pricks. The classism is real. And if you raise I don't know, maybe it would have turned out fun. But another thing, and this is silly, but Jake is definitely on this. If you get him going, I don't know if you guys talked about soccer, but if you raise him in Latin America, they're going to think soccer is a great sport. They're going to think it's like the epitome of a macho man, and that's kind of untenable for me. that's a deal breaker. Now, since we got here, my son plays soccer. I've coached soccer for years, and it's been kind of a soccer redemption. I like it, but I would not want a son who only plays soccer. That would. When I was making my decision, that was a problem. Now, whatever.
I mean, it's a pretty important sport. Not playing soccer is actually almost like a disadvantage because then you can't play with like people from all around the world type of
Totally.
thing.
Oh yeah, it's a pain in the ass. Playing basketball, and that goes the other way. That's how you know. That's what. And I tell Jake, if you raise your kid in one of these smaller cities, he's not going to be playing. Jake played D2 basketball in college. Your kid is not playing D2 basketball in college. Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. You can't to get in a competitive basketball game even in Lima, or to keep it anywhere. I mean, you got to go out of your way and you got to coordinate. You can't just show up to a court and get in and pick up. You could show up to a court and get in and pick up, but it's not going to be a good game. And then you want to play softball. You're looking at the embassy leagues. Actually, Venezuelans really changed it. When the big wave of 2017 Venezuelans hit Lima, the softball leagues, the sizes have doubled. But still, you're going, those leagues are out by the embassy. It's really far away. And softball is tough to get into. No, no.
So
You know,
this is kind of thinking about like activities for the kids, sports,
yeah.
and I think one of the big things you're mentioning is how like in the US it's much more competitive and there's sort of the angle with playing
No, they're just like,
college
I'm going to
ball
be
or
an ugly
and
American
getting
here, but we're playing real man sports. Like I was the biggest ugly American down this. I never had anything against soccer before I moved to South America. But then once it's all there is everywhere and you see them flopping around and crying and they show the replay and they didn't even get hit. And it's like, this is just such a wimpy sport to watch. Like these guys are wimps. It's just hard to watch. You get so annoyed that I played up the ugly American and I annoy not just the Latins, but also your European expat pals think soccer's a great sport. That's all they want. The English, the Irish, all those guys think soccer's great too. So I really played up the ugly American. Now again, my son
interesting.
plays soccer on a club team, and I've head coached many times. I've played a lot, so I've had a soccer redemption. But I was just kind of playing the ugly American. But it's really just I wouldn't say it's more. It's definitely more competitive for basketball, baseball. But maybe I'm a little over focused on sports. But if you want your kid playing those sports and being competent at them, if you want them going to a American university and having a shot at a scholarship, or even playing at the collegiate level, it's going to be pretty hard to get there. I know Peruvians who've done it. I know a guy in Arequipa who played D1 baseball. But that's rare, very rare.
Yeah, it's a whole different mentality that you'd be like instilling in your kids because in the US everything's very structured and competitive and kind of like the what do you call it like uh Chinese dragon
Tiger
parents or
moms,
whatever tiger
Tiger mom.
moms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm totally a Tiger dad.
Yeah,
I'm totally a
and
Tiger dad.
just this kind of idea of like you're going to the lesson, then you're going to the sport,
Yeah.
and where like in Latin America they really don't have this concept that much. They have all the hobbies, they have all the sports, but they don't have this concept of like you gotta be the best to get into the university, and like they don't have it. It's I don't know. Everything's just more like casual in Latin
Yeah.
America when it comes
We
to
also
that
got a
stuff.
lot of more deadbeats. That's true. No, there's trade offs. Yeah, that's happier. But they got a lot of deadbeats, and they're not the best at anything. So that's that too.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's a
It's a nice way to live, yeah.
dilemma
But
for
I mean, I
people.
want more. I'm a Tiger dad. I will, and I'm learning to moderate that and chill out a little bit. But my own disappointments in life are motivating that. I'll be honest. I'll be honest about that. My own my own failures and trying to avoid the trouble I got into specifically is got me being a Tiger dad. I mean, I got the Boy Scout. I didn't even know a Boy Scout when I was a kid. Now I got a shirt. I'm then the Scout leader. I got my clearances. I'm with the Boy Scouts with my son. I got my girls and Girl Scouts. They all play an instrument at school. My son's been playing baseball, basketball, soccer, and I've been coaching all of them, head coach or assistant, for
Mhm.
6 years. Yeah, the daughter, I'm coaching her softball. I mean, we're all over them. I ought to ease. I sometimes think I ought to ease back, but I don't know. I guess my own disappointment fueling that. And I don't think that has anything to do with Latin America, but that's just me. Our generation, and I think our generation, that's it. Our millennial, Gen X ish, are really over involved parents. And I think that's a reaction to the boomers. My parents, I, they cared, but the way I explain it to my in laws, the Peruvian in laws, is they care about because they don't get it. How do you not talk to your dad for a month, your mom for a month? You don't see them. You see them once a year. How do you do that? And I'm just like, they care about it. They don't want anything bad to happen to me, but they're not interested. And that's really a boomer. And I think our generation is kind of an overreaction to that. Not all of us, but I think a lot of the dads in my neighborhood, there's a lot of Tiger dads.
Yeah, there's there's a lot of pros to like what's it called? Keeping people to a high standard and having high expectations of your kids and like having them in an environment that holds them to a high standard can definitely be a good thing.
And living vicariously through them, fulfilling my dreams through them. Joking, not joking.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I think another element to it, this conversation about kids in LATAM versus the US, is raising kids in LATAM is a relatively uniform experience. Like whether you're in Texas or St. Louis or Philadelphia or whatever, it's like 90% the same thing. Whereas like in Latin America, depending on the country and the city within the country, that child raising experience could be like it's very wildly different. If you're on the beach, the
I do not agree with
mountains.
that. I do not agree with that.
Okay.
Maybe you're right in what way you're talking about, but I'm just telling you, I'm trying to raise my kids completely different than the way I grew up. And I grew up in the suburbs. I would tell Latins, it's like The Simpsons. Well, what you see on The Simpsons, that's kind of like where I grew up. And I hated it. I think it's just a terrible place to go. I think you either go rural or you go inner city. And I've always I always liked big cities better. As soon as I became an adult, I left the suburbs forever, never went back. Now I'm now in inner city Philadelphia, and the kids just have a million friends. We just have a million friends. 4x our social network in 1 year, and they're taking the bus and the train, and they're walking to school, and the car. We're never in the car for more than about 10 minutes. So in the suburbs, very different. There's if you go like 100-yard radius, how many friends from where I'm at? It's a double-digit number. I don't know, but then you go out to 200 yards. We've got dozens of families. They get locked out of the house. For example, I got locked out of the house when I grew up. If the neighbor wasn't home or whatever, I mean, you basically sit on the porch and wait for my. But if my kids get locked out, they've got many places, many.
And
Not one.
you think this is something that you picked up a little bit from Latin America, the idea of walkable cities and the
No,
importance
I
of
was on this before Latin America, but Latin America is paradise if you're in this camp. If
the
you're an
walkable
anti-car
city
person
camp?
like I am, then no, Latin America's they're old cities and they were poor cities for a long time, so they didn't build any of these cities. There's sometimes so in Lima, the Gringo Enclave we keep talking about, La Molina, that's kind of a suburban car required area to live. But the vast majority of these cities, most people didn't grow up with cars, and these cities were built before cars, kind of like the East Coast cities in the States. You look in inner city New York, Boston, Philly, these are not great to have a car in. New York, oh, got to be crazy. But that's why they're built. And parts of St. Louis are actually like that. But yeah, it's nothing like, say, Phoenix.
Right. There's very few
Which
places
is
in the U.S. and I like
yeah,
with
there's not
downtown
many.
Philly, you've found like one of those few.
Well, I'd say where we are is still kind of car dependent. If you want to be a tiger dad and have lots of activities, but it's almost never more than 10 minutes, and we can do things. You can go to the store, take the train down. You can get just it's a little harder. We still use the car every day, but it's like a hybrid. It's not
Did you ever
car
get
for everything.
Peruvian citizenship?
No, interesting question. But I by the time we were going for it and eyeing the exit for the house in St. Louis, I hadn't lined up my enough history of tax declarations to Peru, and I just couldn't. I didn't do it, and I just let it go. I'll get it. We'll go back someday. I'll get it, but no, I never got it.
Yeah, because you probably saw that they changed it from 2 years, and they're looking to change it to 5 years of legal residency to get citizenship. I believe it's still 2 years officially. There might be a fast track for someone who's married to a Peruvian or kids that are Peruvian. But yeah,
I didn't know that. I mean, it is what it is. But I didn't know that. Wow, 5, not as easy as 2.
yeah, we'll have to double check if it's a quicker timeline than 5, given the circumstances. Like if you have a child born in Peru, type of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, that's cool. And the kids have the dual citizenship.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. 2 of them were born in Peru. One of them actually born in the States. My
Mhm.
first was born in the States, but the other 2 were born in Lima.
And how do you think about that? Like, has it come up when you have the experience of having one child born in the U.S. and the other 2 born in Peru? Does it come up a little bit with paperwork or flights or I don't know things like that?
The I'd have to think about that. The one way it comes up often is when it's among the kids, just saying who was born in America, who was born in Peru, and they kind of argue about it because you know in Spanish, and my wife will say this, but in Latin American culture, like so, I was born in Chicago. I actually was not born in St. Louis. I was born in Chicago,
Uh-huh.
and in Latin American culture, for the rest of my life, I would say I'm from Chicago. I would never say that in English. I'm from Chicago. I grew up in St. Louis. I would never say I'm from Chicago. But in Latin American culture, you are from where you were born forever. And so among them, in their eyes, my daughters are Peruvian and my son is American. But I mean, culturally, they're all the same. Then they're all both. But they'll get into that to each other. No, Sebastian, because they'll kind of adopt that Latin way of thinking and say, oh, no, you know, the boy's American and they're Peruvian. But and then, you know, they're growing up here and the girls don't speak Spanish. So they consider themselves American. They don't want to be Peruvian. And I don't know. It kind of comes up with that. And depending on the context, they'll argue this way or that. But that's what comes up. As far as paperwork, no.
Uh-huh.
I guess the only pain is if you have a Peruvian passport, you have to use it to enter and leave Peru. So if their pass this is the biggest pain in the ass, renewing passports and the national ID of the day and renewing that stuff, and then the wife has to vote. When the children turn 18, they have to vote, or you get fines, and you have to keep up on those fines. They're not much. It's a lot of extra work.
Okay, a little
The
bit of
Peruvian side, the American
citizenship
side,
maintenance.
and then the American side. No, I guess they're going to have to declare taxes, even if they want to live somewhere else. They'll have to declare taxes in the states. But I mean, it's not much.
But they feel
Renewing the
American.
passports is the hardest part. Renewing stuff, and because if you enter on an expired Peruvian passport, they'll hold you, and you'll have to renew it there. You know, it happened to my wife. We went, and I don't even think it was her passport. It was her DNE, and so you can get it renewed here in the states. You got to find the closest consulate, which in Philly there isn't one. We got to drive to Patterson, 2 hours away. There might be a consulate here. I don't know. No, we lived in St. Louis when we did it. We had to drive to Chicago. So I mean, that's 5 hours. It's a pain in the ass. Yeah.
No, that's funny. Yeah, it's definitely one of those identity things.
I
Where
would
you're
still get
born.
it. I would get if I could go back and do it. I would get my Peruvian citizenship, but it didn't happen. And you know, if I go back
Sure.
we go back to live, I'll do it.
It's kind of actually. I just want to touch upon this. It's kind of funny that you say it's more of a Latin thing where you were born. You're saying
Where
sort
were
of
you
in
born?
the
Where were you
U.S.
born? Let me ask
Uh,
you. Where were you born?
in Canada.
No, I mean what city?
Uh, in should I say on the podcast? It's somewhere in Ontario.
Is that where you grew up?
Yeah.
So I guess the way to think about it is if you grew up somewhere else, then it applies. It doesn't really apply to you because you grew up in the same place you were born. But we were in Rio just last year, and I was talking about one of the taxi drivers about this, and which I must say, Portuguese is like pretty easy if you got Spanish. Anyway, he said I had a buddy who was born in Para or one of those states up north, but he moved to Rio when he was like 3. And I was asking, so is this guy? Would you consider him a carioca, a Rio, from Rio? He said no, he wasn't born here. The guy's never lived anywhere else since he was 3. And this taxi said, no, he's not. If he wasn't born here, he doesn't have the carioca spirit. And that's it. He captured it. That's what they see it as. And if you weren't conceived and brought into the world in a place, then you're not from there. And that's really my experience of what the Peruvians and Colombians and probably all of them believe. So,
And so
and
you
I guess
think
in that sense, my spirit,
Americans
I'm from
actually
Chicago.
less? You think like
Oh yeah,
Americans
oh my God,
and
I would if I told somebody I'm from Chicago, they'd be like, "Oh, what do you think of? I don't know. Tell me some. Say, what neighborhood? I don't remember. I don't know. I know the hospital I was born at, or the town. I don't know what. I don't know what. They lived in a suburb. I don't know which one it was. Well, what do you think of the God Illuminati's or whatever the? They would ask me something about Chicago, and I wouldn't know.
this leads me to an interesting question. We're already a little bit over. Hopefully, you're good on time, but
Yeah, I'm good.
I
I'm
I
wide
I,
open.
I can't resist. Is I think you've written a little bit about this, like the idea of class and social hierarchy in Latin America versus the U.S. There's a lot of rabbit holes you could probably go down with that, but it's it's kind of something that you have to learn as a gringo, and that we didn't grow up with. Some of these sort of customs and ways of thinking about it that you had to sort of learn over time.
This is funny you bring this up now because I just published an article and I just after about there was this I've been in social media lately and there was this Peruvian woman who said the Miraflores district is middle class and it's common around the world for rich people to say they're to believe they're middle class. But I did a big one of my big takedowns on the blog and I've done this before about social class so many times. I was like, this is deja vu, and I went on to artificial intelligence and I no, I didn't. I was just thinking about that. Why am I so obsessed with? Why am I so obsessed with social class? And I came to the realization that I was obsessed with it before Latin America. But if you go down to Latin America, it's just gasoline on the fire because it's so stratified, and and you get used to it. And the thing is, I don't know if it's this way anymore because the expat community is so big. But back in the 2000s and early 2010s, before the smartphone era, I mean, if you were a gringo, you waltzed right into the upper class. You were invited. That's just where you landed. And it was like a free entrance to the. I mean, why wouldn't you marry one of them? Why wouldn't you live in this world with the rich of Latin America? And you start to think things you never thought in the United States about anything less than upper class. Um, but I don't remember what your question was, but I've thought a lot about this and written about it. And I've just recently examined. And in my email newsletter, I get really personal with stuff that I don't necessarily want out there in the public, like real public. I mean,
Well, what should people know about this concept? Maybe people are listening to this; they're just newer to Latin America, or and so what would you? How would you explain to them like this invisible lens?
well, I think you got to first see the numbers. You just got to see the traditional numbers. This is changing. They are becoming more. I don't want to say Americanized, but more first worldized every year. It's getting more like, I guess, what was this shape be? More like a mango, more like a big middle class, smaller upper class, smaller lower class, especially in the big cities like Lima. But historically, it's been a pyramid: a tiny upper class, a small to mediumish middle class, and a huge underclass. And if you're in the upper class, you only hang. It's a bubble. You only hang around upper class people, and it affects the interpersonal behavior. You have to wear that on your sleeve. The way they dress, the way they talk, the way they treat people from the lower classes. A great book, if you want to look at the real upper crust of the upper class, is Un Mundo para Julius, Julius's World, written by a great Peruvian author. I mean, every book has something like this. Mario Vargas Llosa explores it a lot in his books. But A World for Julius is Julius's World, whatever. A
Hmm.
World for Julius.
Okay,
It's it's a great look at the classes, but it's not going to
1970.
be long before you feel it. It is changing in the capitals. In Lima, the middle class is actually bigger than the lower class, but the upper class is very small, very insular, and they're really they can like I said, some of the best people come out of there, but it's also some of the worst, and they're really haughty and arrogant, and that was a at the time I cited that as a big reason why I left. I was really sick of dealing with them. But not any one that I would say that guy just got on. Lady was so obnoxious, but there were. I can't think of. They really can put on airs.
Hmm.
I don't know where I'm guilty, and maybe I'm doing something wrong too, acting like the place belongs to me. Yeah, no, classism is something to get used to, and it'll hit you right away, and that doesn't exist here. Like you can you know, the one I always mention that you just never. Maybe you will someday, but you never have yet. Is something like the Kardashians. All right, so these like minted rich family, beautiful women, all marrying like what were formerly the lowest class black athletes and rappers. Like you would just that doesn't exist. I don't know, maybe it exists. I don't think so. I think I don't know what they think about that kind of thing where they see that what's going on there. But you could do that here. You know, you can have like JD Vance was like this you know Rust Belt shithole town, and then he was at Yale, and they were interested in all, but very rare. It is starting to happen. I know people like that at the best
Hmm.
schools in Lima, but I mean that is rare. That is the very much the exception.
And that's kind of
Yeah,
why there's such an importance of private schools in Latin America, is because if you can go to those select, because I think maybe someone from the outside looking in might not be able to distinguish, because they're probably like historic private schools that have been around 100 years that the families have been going to for a long time, and then there's like newer private schools that are just, popped up in the past 20 years or something. And you might not know the difference, like where the people actually go, like where the who's who like really go. And I've noticed that actually even a lot of locals in the country, so it's not just a gringo thing, but a lot of the locals don't know the private schools. Like if you, like if you ask a random Peruvian, like in the middle of nowhere, um, like they might not know like the top two
Oh,
private
no, they do.
schools.
Yeah,
Where
no, they would definitely have heard of Markham and Roosevelt. So I got to back up and pick at something you said there. I wouldn't call them private schools. I would call them elite schools. They're
elite
basically all
schools, yeah,
private schools. And my experience is very limited in this to Lima. I don't know. Every country's going to have a different public school situation, but from what I've gathered, there just aren't that many of them, and they're not convenient. And everybody basically goes to a private school. It's just there are in the poor neighborhoods, there are cheap private schools. They are just almost cost nothing, and the
yeah,
extortion gangs
and
might
they
leave a
just
grenade at them every once in a while. So private school alone doesn't really say anything. There's middle class private schools.
yeah, there's a lot more
You're Alani
options
at
of
least.
private school,
Yeah, in the
like different
states, any
level.
private school is going to naturally be a little bit. I mean, by nature, it's going to be more expensive than a public school. I mean, I can't think of a private school that would have like a lower educational, like by the rankings, lower than the closest public school. Maybe like a really weird religious an advent like that. But the vast majority, if you're paying anything, it's to get better than your normal public school, and the vast majority of those are pretty good. And in Peru, there's not many. They're not good. Everybody goes private. If I had to guess, I'd guess 90% of maybe 80 to 90% of Peruvian kids are going to private school. Just there's really cheap ones where there's not great learning going on, and there's ones that are, I guess $20,000 a year where there's some learning going on. That was the other thing I had to decide back in the day. Is I've met the kids, when you're in the upper class, when you're working at the companies down there, which I had a job in corporate Peru and I've worked in corporate. You meet the kids that are coming out of these. I honestly don't think they're any more prepared than somebody who came out of the standard American public school, and that costs $20,000 a year. I was like, fuck that. I'll go back to the States, live in grandma's house. Go to school for free, and if we want to go back to Peru, we will, and we might. But I don't know how we got where we were when we started this.
Yeah, no, it's kind of, it's like it's like public school in the U.S. versus private school in Latin America. Um, it,
I
it's
think I've looked into this a lot. Like I said, Tiger Dad, trying to have something, give my kids a different life than I had, and I think even in the States, if you go to private school, what you were paying for, unless you're like in an inner city area and you can't get into a magnet school, if you are choosing to go to private school over a viable public school option, you are buying the network. I don't think you're buying the education. And this is even more true. You're buying the kids that your kids are going to go to school with. Who are their
yeah,
friends going to be? What are their social norms going to be? That's what you're buying. And that would totally be worth $20,000 a year to go to Roosevelt or Markham. I mean, those are the top, the upper crust, Julius's world. That's where their kids go. So
yeah,
that would be worth it. It's just that's not that important.
yeah,
Or to be more honest, 7 years, 10 years ago, whatever, 8 years ago, I didn't have the money. I didn't have the money for that. So that's the real reason. Shell out
yeah.
for a
No,
middle
I hear
class,
you.
a middle class private school, or go to grandma's house and get some free school and have my own warehouse.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
And you maintain the connection. You speak Spanish in the house a little bit. The
Yeah.
connection.
So this is interesting. My son was not speaking English when we moved to the States. All right. I mean, a little bit. He could understand me, but he was definitely Spanish dominant. In 6 months of public school kindergarten, 6 months, he lost all his Spanish, refused to speak it. I hate Spanish. That's a quote. I hate Spanish. When we're talking to him after 6 months or a year or whatever it was, I hate Spanish. I don't even speak. I don't want to speak Spanish. And that's really the immigrant experience of, from 100 years ago, 50 years ago, there's old Italians or Jewish immigrants. The first generation kind of maintains their identity, but the kids, they don't want to be, watching soccer and drinking pisco or whatever. They want hip hop, NFL, and baseball. You know what I mean? They want to be Americans. The ESL kids are not the cool kids in school. My kid was in the ESL class. They pulled him out of his classroom to go study English with the other, basically the migrant laborers. And I think he saw right away, these are not the cool kids. He did not want to. So he just dropped Spanish like a rock. That's it. That's the story, and that's the story of almost all the couples I know. The only ones where the kids retain Spanish, both parents speak only Spanish in the house, and that to do that, you almost need both parents to not speak. Those are the ones. Those are the kids that
both speak in the
the
house. You
children of
think even
immigrants.
the
Yeah,
mother speaking Spanish isn't enough?
I have not met a couple, and there will be couples that claim that. I don't believe it. Actually, I do know a couple. I do know a couple. The woman was a teacher in Chile, not for long, but a language teacher. So she got her Spanish on point
Well, the
pretty easy.
question is if the
And
kid
husband's
responds
Chilean.
in English or responds in Spanish
Oh
at
no, they
first.
respond in English. Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's the whole thing. They understand us a lot. He's my son especially has a base, and he'll understand us, but he'll respond in English. So get him to speak Spanish. I mean, it's hard. Kids don't want to do hard things. Adults don't want to do hard things.
I don't
Learning a
know. You
language
get the
is hard.
right Latina mom. Tú me respondes en español.
Hey, I haven't seen it, and I've seen a lot of them. I've seen a lot of them. I just don't believe it. It's not common. It's not common. All of the standard story, immigrant story, is the kids don't speak unless they're basically the children of migrant labor. I mean, I bet Puerto Ricans are the perfect case study. They speak both, and the Puerto Ricans who are born and raised in the States almost never speak. They only speak if they were born, lived a good bit in Puerto Rico. The son of the migrant laborer types, the Mexicans and Central Americans, where the parents don't speak or don't speak it well, those kids speak. And that was really our neighborhood of St. Louis had a lot of them. Those kids will speak Spanish, but anything less than that, you got to be really committed. Like I said, this university English teacher and her Chilean husband, and she's an English language teacher, language learner, language teacher. I didn't even meet their kids. They have babies. Their kids aren't even up yet. They might be speaking a good Spanish. Now, that does not to say my son will someday. I'm always telling him, dude, when you're in 18, when you're in college, you're going to be telling all the girls, oh, I'm a bilingual household. I've been bilingual my whole life. He's going to play up the Latin lover shit.
Oh, yeah.
When he's in college. Now, though, it's hard. Now he's 12. Up until now, it's hard. And nobody wants to do hard things. So, I mean, and it's not cool. It's not cool. If you're in grade school or high school, they want to see.
He's got to be dancing
Uzi Vert
salsa or something.
And Kyle Schwarber and Lil Uzi Vert. They're not looking at. I guess Bad Bunny got a little bit of cool points, but the kids really don't listen to him.
Okay. As we get to wrapping up, Colin, we'll do one or two reflective, fun questions to end the episode strong. If you could give one piece of brutally honest advice to someone thinking of moving to Latin America as a expat today, what would it be?
I would go back to my list. Don't be a I don't know. Make it a little hard for yourself. Don't make it this soft and weak experience. Don't do remote work only. Join a sports team where you're the only gringo. Don't live in the nicest part of town. Don't use dating apps. Don't buy food at the fancy supermarkets. Don't take Ubers. Don't use online maps when out and about. Don't carry plastic. Don't stream all your video. Don't stream all your music. Don't hire fixers. And don't go secular. There's my list.
I love it. We'll have
Make
to
it hard. Make it a little hard.
I like it. I like it a lot, actually. I really like it. This is something I've said. Like, you should have intentional adversity in your life, so that everything's not too easy. Okay, I like that a lot. Quick writing tip. Selfish question here. What's your writing routine or a tool? I don't know if you're doing AI stuff yet. Are you using any technology tools? Like, what's a quick unlock to consistent writing?
I'm really embracing AI these last couple of years, but I thought you were going to say this when I asked your tip on podcasting. I thought you were going to say what my tip for writing is, and this is going to be my tip for writing. And I think this should be the tip for podcasts. It's just quantity. Just start. Don't stop. You need to do thousands of words. Thousands. That's it. There's nothing going to be more important than that. Thousands of pages. Think about that. Thousands of pages in Word. You need to get there. Think about just start and do it every day. And I have not been good at this. My business is eating my life. My business is doing really well. My writing doesn't pay. So I'm writing my memoir, and I haven't written a word in 3 weeks. So it's hard when it doesn't pay. But if you want to get good at writing, you got to write hundreds of thousands of words. Let me say that. Hundreds of thousands.
That makes sense. And last question, what's one thing you miss most about South America and one thing you're surprisingly happy about being back in the US?
Those are good ones. I wasn't ready for them, but I've got one for Latin America. So I went to my pal's wedding in Guadalajara, and right off the plane, We we get to the we get to a table somewhere in the Colonia Americana, I think they call it, and some of his expat pals and some of his Mexican pals who hang around the expats are all around a table, and it's just this lunch that lasts like 2 hours, and nobody's going anywhere. Nobody has anything to do, and I miss this so much. This just not running around to do anything. We don't have to do anything today. We don't have to be anywhere. We can just sit here and talk and do nothing. And that just doesn't happen much here at all. And I also miss the expat gang, that part of it. You know, you got these, usually your crew, I guarantee your crew where you are is just a motley crew. Nobody's from the same place. You know, you got an Irishman, you got an Englishman, you got an American, and they're all talking. You got somebody from the East Coast, somebody from the West Coast, you got a, you know, and you just got a weird group.
So true.
It has this kind of magic to it where you just clown each other and you talk shit about, I would always talk shit about the soccer and the English food and stuff like that. And, you know, they make fun of us for whatever, you know, being big and stupid and naive, whatever. But I miss that. I miss the expat scene and I miss the do nothing. What did I surprise myself about America? I like the commerce. I remember, and I knew this, I used to hate Walmart before I ever moved to South America. I was there a year by the time I moved, I visited, and I came into a Walmart, and it was just like, oh my God, there's so much good stuff here. Great prices. Now I'm in the Costco cult, but just the quality of things and the low prices. Stuff, basically stuff. I don't want to say the money, but yeah, the money. But I mean, the
Abundance
material
of
things
stuff.
you can accumulate. I drive a $60,000 car. How many people drive a $60,000 car in New Mexico? Like what percent of the population? It's a 0%. It's less than one. It's less than 0.5%. And I don't even turn it. They don't even turn heads here. Nobody's looking at your car. You got a $60,000 car. My house. I got a 2,000 square foot 4-bedroom house full of nice shit. And I just don't think I'd ever have that much stuff. I like the stuff. I like the material stuff. You go to Costco, you can get outfitted. You know, $20 a shirt. Nice stuff. Brands, you know, Banana Republic. And you know, down in Latin America, it's a pain in the ass to find size 12, size 13 shoes. You're fucked. You're fucked. I had to buy my shoes from the state. I had to buy my shoes from the States. You know, you can get really cheap, low quality stuff, or you can get medium quality stuff for really expensive. But you can't get really nice stuff cheap, definitely. And sometimes you just can't even get really nice stuff. So I would say the stuff, the material wealth of the United States, you really take for granted if you only lived here.
And if I may, is it a good thing though? Is it like maybe too much abundance? Even going back to the kids thing, and
I
going
don't
back
think
to
it makes you
the
happier. No, it doesn't make you happier. I think it could be. There was an old. It might still be around. Poor but happy was just the name of this forum. It used to be the dominant one for Colombia until the psycho trolls. They actually deleted the Colombia forum because it was starting to go off. The beefs were starting to go offline. The Colombia expats from back then, but just the name of that, poor but happy, just the idea that captures with the expat life.
just
You're going to be
the
poor. You're not going to have as much shit as if you're in the States or wherever you're from, but you might be happier. That's kind of the dream. And it is
I'm actually more interested in the first thing you said, which is the do nothing piece of it. And you know, now that you're back in the U.S., like, do you like how everyone's like constantly on the go, or would you
well,
rather
for my
be in like
kids, I have
a
three
LATAM?
kids, and I'm a tiger dad, and I have high not expect hopes, whatever. Give them all the parenting I can. But once they're out, I definitely want to get back. We've already talked about it. It's on our radar. We're sick
Retirement?
of it here. No, going back to Peru or somewhere else.
Yeah,
Sometime my wife, maybe not Peru, maybe Mexico, maybe Chile, maybe who knows. But we're thinking about getting that.
a LATAM retirement
So maybe not. And this is a thing I'd like to talk to you about
or
being a Canadian.
Mediterranean.
But I think for most Americans, Canadian is just not on the radar. But we visited Montreal last and Quebec City, and
Uh,
Quebec is really interesting. And I'm studying French, and I'd like to ask what a Anglo Canadian would. I know you must have some insights on Quebec. I've spent a week there, so
it's a cool
you know,
place. It's like the real
yeah, I'm
Canada
sure they
in a
got to be
way.
obnoxious to you guys a little bit, though. The language fascists or the snobby, something's got to be. You guys got to complain about the Quebecers a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Montreal for a few years. I really like it. Speak French, so
We
it's a
love.
pretty cool identity, and a lot of things that people think are Canadian are actually really from Quebec, like
Yeah,
poutine and stuff like that.
maple
Um,
syrup.
yeah, so uh, yeah, it's a good place. Okay, we'll get to wrapping it up there, dude. So fun just to do. I could talk forever just about these. Like expat dilemmas and like philosophical questions and stuff. So thank you for being a good sport, and we'll have to have you back someday. Maybe like you, me, and Richard or something. That could be cool. We'll see.
Yo, I'm trying to get back into the content game. So if you want to do it again, we'll do a part two. I'm in.
All right, awesome. Any final words where they can find you, all that good stuff?
Uh, Given it's a podcast, a lot of these people might not be big readers. I would say check out the Expat Chronicles podcast. Leave me a comment. Let me know you want to hear another one if you like it. Expat Chronicles podcast.
And
The latest one's about what is it? Emeralds and loan sharking in Bogota.
and the blog's a classic. I mean, a lot of them aren't even up online anymore. Old blogs and stuff. So
Kids change everything.
yours is one of the only ones I think most stuff is still up. If I'm not mistaken.
Oh no, the nefarious stuff is down. But yeah,
It's all day.
yeah, the worst stuff is down. It's
The
been
worst
gone
stuff
for
is
10
down.
years, more than 15 years. It's been down.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
kids change everything.
All right. So, guys, we'll wrap up the podcast there. Please subscribe to the My Latin Life podcast. Please also go check out the Expat Chronicles podcast. I know there's a handful of episodes floating around the internet. And we'll put a link in the description to the expatchronicles.com as well. We put out 2 episodes a week with amazing guests like Colin. You won't want to miss an episode of the My Latin Life podcast. So ciao for now. We'll see you in the next episode.